We've all become familiar with the archetypal hero's journey, and we can recognize when it's being used in successful stories or movies. And you could argue that without that general structure, a story doesn't have any tension and doesn't offer any resolution, and therefore is not really successful. But certain narratives, certain stories have done a particularly good job at this, and to my mind, the Harry Potter saga by J.K. Rowling is one such story. This channel is Meditation Amsterdam. My name is Pablo, and today we get to look into some of the details that make the Harry Potter story a deeply significant story when it comes to self-realization. In order to to point those out, we need to be almost already knowing what we're looking for, so that we don't get distracted by some of the great production value scenes that these movies have, or some of the action stuff, or the kiddie stuff, or the magical stuff even. But really look for the meaning behind certain scenes, and what is the real narrative, what is the real threat underneath the entire thing. We think it's about a boy who can do magic and wants to kill Lord Voldemort, but underneath it all, of course, there is something way, way deeper taking place, which I'm sure is there not by coincidence. J.K. Rowling knew exactly what she was doing. She was telling a story that is deeply filled with significance. So to me, some of the critical scenes in the Harry Potter saga are, for example, the opening of the story in which Harry is in his crib with his mother next to him, and that's when Lord Voldemort enters the room and tries to kill him, leaving, quote unquote, only a scar. Now, there's a lot of meaning behind this. For one thing, the three of them together in a room is very meaningful because, as we have discussed in the past, it is contact with mother that gives rise to the first big split in our psyche. Our psyche starts as a unity, and in contact with mother, our psyche gets its first split. It's a massive split of me and the other. So a me is born in that split, the egoic me, or the incipient ego. And mother is the first other. So it's no coincidence that the three of them are there in a room. Lord Voldemort is the spirit of the ego. It's not the fully realized ego, but it is the capacity that we have within ourselves to develop an ego. And it's an unavoidable, step. And whilst the mother is painted in the light of having only saved Harry's life, it was her very presence that invited Lord Voldemort into the room. So the three of them had to be together in that scene. And then we have the scar itself. It's in the words of the Golden Compass, which is another very rich archetypal story, just a little cut. But it's much, much more than that, of course, because although it is skin deep, just a scar, it goes all the way to the very heart of what Harry is. His psyche is now completely split. Proof of that split is seen already in the first movie, in which the Sorting Hat doesn't know whether to place Harry in the Gryffindor group or in the Slytherin group. And these two signify, on the one hand, having a good heart, being charismatic, resourceful, and on the other one, being mischievous, aggressive, and with a certain tendency to for destructiveness. And that's where we see that Harry has been split in a way that is very, very disturbing to him personally. There's now evil residing in him, and it's very tangible to the head, and it becomes over time more and more tangible to Harry himself. He starts to discover that he speaks in parcel tongue, which is a Slytherin trait. It's the ability to speak to snakes. In other words, to communicate with evil, at least in the way, or with primal capacity to do harm. Let's put it like that. Let's not call it evil because it has a kind of moral connotation to it. And other signs start to show that Harry embodies something that is very, very dark, which was conveyed to him in that episode with Lord Voldemort. Now, as time goes by, Harry comes head on with this conflict. And there comes a moment where Sirius Black, Harry's uncle, is hosting him in the House of Black, and Harry says, I don't know if I'm a good person anymore. There's so much anger inside of me, and it seems like this uncontrollable rage. It makes Harry withdraw, it makes him become withdrawn and kind of isolated away from his friends and everything that he loves, because he just doesn't trust himself anymore. There's too much darkness inside, and he's afraid that it may lash out and destroy things. So there you see the conflict now reaching really a boiling point in the psyche. A psyche that longs for integration and yet feels itself totally split, and it is also afraid that the dark part of the split is going to win. So that's the beginning, you could say, of the longing for a path or a journey of self-cultivation and transformation that can somehow bring an end to this divide. And that path is provided to Harry by the death of Dumbledore, because Dumbledore leaves a mission for Harry, which is that of going out there and hunting for Hocruxes. Hocruxes are a nice little analogy in and of themselves, because they signify, to my mind, chakras or psychosomatic knots that have been hijacked by the ego in order to establish itself. And that is signified by the way Tom Riddle becomes Lord Voldemort. Lord Voldemort is not born that way. It's Tom Riddle, having had a very traumatic childhood, one in which his magical abilities land him in a lot of trouble. And in order for the ego to cement itself in the psyche, in the psychosomatic system, it needs to hijack all our centers of power, and it needs to render them inert, essentially. None of that malarkey of magical stuff happening in the throat, the heart, the third eye, the solar plexus is allowed by the ego, because all of it seems threatening. It's all reminiscent of physical ancient powers that the ego cannot control. So they are all repressed, and they are effectively killed by the ego. And by effectively, I mean that there's people who live entire lives with their chakra system or their psychosomatic plexuses completely closed. They never manage to open them again. So they are effectively killed. And all the goodness and all the magic and all the power that resides in these centers is rendered dead for all effects and purposes. So Lord Voldemort cements his darkness, his dark magic, by creating these Hocruxes, which represent the effective blockage of these chakras. And it is no surprise that through Harry's journey of opening the chakra system, if you want to see it that way, or opening the different plexuses and essentially healing himself of trauma, has to kill these Hocruxes. And every time one of them is killed, it unleashes a horrible, dark thing. And it kind of represents all the darkness that we have to face in our shadow work. So the killing of the Hocruxes represents the trauma resolution and shadow work that we have to do for ourselves, in which we have to face everything from guilt, shame, rage, jealousy, helplessness, and you name it, right? It all needs to be faced. And then comes the pinnacle of that work, the piece de resistance, the culmination of shadow work, the final sacrifice. And it is a sacrifice that is forced upon Harry when they are losing the battle against Voldemort, and Voldemort says, you now have a choice. Either you come and face me in the forest so that I can kill you, or I'll kill everyone and everything, everyone you love, and destroy everything you love. So now Harry has a lose-lose situation. Either he dies at the hands of Lord Voldemort, or he sees everything he loves die, so that he can, quote-unquote, save himself. And Harry realizes that that this is a lose-lose situation, but he chooses for self-sacrifice. He chooses to lose everything he loves, so that everything he loves can be preserved and live. So he chooses to essentially die for them, die so that they can live. And in making a sacrifice out of himself, there's this scene in which he kisses the little snitch, the golden little ball that they play with in that game of theirs, and Hidditch, I think it's called. And when he kisses the ball, he says, "I'm ready to die." And the moment he says that, the ball opens to reveal the resurrection stone. Now, this is not by coincidence. This is the significance of this moment, is to say that the second you are ready to die to your egoic self, you now have access to immortality, the eternity of the now, the perfect, glistening beauty of the now, which is eternal, and the life that it signifies that goes way, way beyond your own life becomes now available to you. And so Harry faces Lord Voldemort, gets zapped, so he dies actually, only to find that what had really died was the part of Lord Voldemort that resided within him, that there was life beyond that. So he spends a little bit of time in a certain type of heaven with Dumbledore. He returns and he's still alive. Now, one cannot underestimate the significance of this scene. It is the highest culmination of the entire Harry Potter saga, allowing himself to be killed by Lord Voldemort, the surrender, the ultimate surrender, so that everything that he holds dear can be preserved, even if he's not there to enjoy it. And everything that happens after that is kind of a skirmish in which the snake gets killed and Harry is battling Lord Voldemort, but it's all a kind of after the fact fighting, because he was already willing to die. There's nothing left to lose. And that is signified by the moment that he grabs Lord Voldemort after they've been kind of fighting one another. He grabs hold of him in a kind of next to a cliff, and he says, "We now end this the way it started, which is together." And he pulls Lord Voldemort into the abyss, saying, "Now we both die, right? I'm taking you down with me. That's the way it goes. I'm not stuck with you. You're now stuck with me." So they go down into this abyss. Lord Voldemort starts to do his flight thing, and eventually Harry kills him. It is all a spectacular piece of cinematography, amazingly produced, very exciting stuff. I love it. I'm a huge fan of the whole Harry Potter saga. And it is of course an important scene, but when it comes to spiritual significance, Harry's self-sacrifice is far more significant than killing Lord Voldemort. It was a done deal at that point. He was done for. And after that comes something that is a kind of after the climax scene, but it is as significant as every other, and perhaps more so, in which, having vanquished the enemy and eliminated all the blockages in the Hocruxes, Harry has made himself in possession of the 3 deathly hallows, which make him immune to death and the most powerful magician to have ever lived. He has the invisibility cloak, he has the resurrection stone, and the elder wand. And he's still holding the elder wand. He used it to kill Lord Voldemort. And you will remember that Lord Voldemort tried to wield the elder wand, but it resisted him, meaning that the ego can never really wield the power that it craves for. It's not available to the ego. It's only available to the real self, which is Harry. And Ron Weasley, his best friend, plays an interesting role in that scene, because he unknowingly plays the same role that Satan plays in the temptations of Christ, saying, dude, you're all powerful now. You could, in the case of Christ, the devil says you could end world hunger, you could throw yourself off of a cliff and show that you can levitate, or you could kneel to me and take and have power over the entire world. In the case of Harry Potter, Ron says, that's the elder wand. You're wielding. You're the one who holds it, and it responds to you now. You're the most powerful magician in the world. And the first thing that Harry does is he breaks the elder wand and tosses it aside, which comes to show that his transcendental process, his maturation process, the death of his ego, has come full circle. He is not interested in wielding the power that he acquires through his enlightenment, through his full self-transcendence. Alan Watts would call that power that you can be trusted with, because you show that you have no craving for it. And it is, if Harry's self-sacrifice to the hand of Voldemort is the pinnacle of the self-surrender and his journey, this scene of breaking the elder wand is the most significant scene of the entire series, because it's the one where Harry, being able to wield the ultimate power, makes a statement about only wanting to live a normal life. It is what you in Zen or Buddhism would call coming back to the marketplace. The ability to wield ultimate power, and yet the maturity to only live a very mundane life of chopping wood and carrying water. So it's a very significant moment, and it's definitely not there by coincidence, right? So it's all very neatly crafted as a very beautiful transcendental narrative, or self-transcendent narrative, that is the real red thread across the Harry Potter saga. So clearly I've watched these a few times, so I can remember some of the details and some of the greater significance behind them all. And I'm very curious about your take on this one. I took way longer than I typically do for a video, but of course it needed a little bit of explanation, and I thought it deserved a little bit of extra time. So I'm curious about your take on it. Do share it in the comment section. And as usual, if you think that these are interesting or helpful topics to others, then your liking, sharing, and subscribing makes the channel far more available to those who can benefit from it. I'll be back with more videos pretty soon. And until then, cheerio. Bye-bye.